All right, how do I stay lean in the winter months when everyone else gains weight? How am I keeping the abs this winter? This is my winter weight loss game plan. I've got 7 steps that I want to walk you through today. No generic stuff here like, well, you must be in a calorie deficit and do your 10K steps per day and drink lots of water. That's all very reasonable advice, of course. I don't inherently disagree with a lot of that stuff, but I want to share with you the things that I'm actually working on. This is my playbook, if you will, that I'm thinking about over January, February, and very tactically, the timing of this video, Christmas, which is right around the corner. I want to tell you guys exactly how I handle that, so I don't wake up on January the 1st 10 pounds heavier, feeling really sluggish, really guilty for overindulgence over the previous few weeks, and then having to do some kind of January reset. I'd rather coast right through, enjoy myself a little bit, but still maintain lots of structure, so I feel pretty killer and pretty good nick come January the 1st. If you resonate, if that's your approach too, or your ideal approach too, I'm sure you're going to like lots of the 7 steps that I've got for you today. Before we do that, of course, if you're new, this is what we do. It's the meal of the day. Winter-themed oatmeal bowl here today. I've got some cherries on my, you won't see the rolled oats underneath all of this, but the rest assured they're there. I've got my frozen pitted cherries, of course. Apple, something about oats, apple, cinnamon as a combination that is killer this time of year, rather festive indeed. Got my healthy fats with the hemp seeds. The oats are cooked in the soy milk, if you're thinking, if you're thinking, what about protein? Darn protein paranoia. I'm okay with a marginally lower protein breakfast because I go to the gym straight after this anyway. I want to keep it mostly, there's some fat here, of course, I want to keep it mostly carbohydrate focused before my workouts. It's another tip for another day. A little bit of maple syrup over the top. The oats, of course, cooked in the cinnamon, which I think I already mentioned there. Step number 1 then, to stay lean in the winter months. Let's get the elephant in the room out of the way so the other pieces can fall into place after this. Let's talk about how I personally handle Christmas. Well, the first thing I'd like to say on this is Christmas is never actually the problem. And that might sound funny to you because you might, understandably so, associate Christmas with inevitable weight gain. But if you think about this, it's a religious celebration pertaining to one day, that of course being the 25th of December. It's not an excuse for a feast or a blowout for weeks upon weeks at a time stretching into the new year. But this is what people do, and I've certainly done this in the past for the record, eating like a little gremlin for the entirety of December, well into January, just because Christmas, even though it's one day on December 25th, and then of course waking up, as I say, January the 1st, you're 10 pounds heavier, feeling absolutely horrific about the food choices you've engaged in, and then having to do some kind of restart or reset. Rather, how I've handled December so far this year, for context, it's December 15th at the time of me recording this video, so we're just over 2 weeks in. I've actually eaten within about 200 calories, maybe 300 at a push, 200 calories of my calorie intake, my calorie maintenance intake level for the entirety of December. In other words, I have effectively maintained my body weight, my current body fat levels, all the way through December, despite what's come up, and we'll cover this in a second and how I do that in just a second, but despite what social engagements I've had, I've actually been at calorie maintenance all of this month. What this allows me to do is it allows me to have my 2 fun days, which I do every year, 24th, 25th of December. They are my designated fun, no structure, no rules days where I don't feel guilty for the composition of my diet not being quite so clean, for not really considering calories or macronutrients for once in my darn life, and just parking those standards and that internal self-talk around nutrition just for those 2 days and having my fun. And I dare say, you know, on those days I might hit 3,500 calories. And that's not my suggestion on what you should do. And that's not me saying it's okay. That's just what I do. And it's not perfect and it's not clean and it's not pretty. But here's the commitment. I'm back tidying up my diet on the 26th of December, no matter what. No excuse. And then I also have the peace of mind to know that the rest of December, I still ate to near calorie maintenance, close to calorie maintenance enough to where I don't have to feel too guilty, like I've massively sabotaged or disrupted for having those 2 days. So that's how I personally handle things. I only have 2 days where my calories are rather likely to increase above my baseline maintenance level. And that's how I get to January the 1st, not hating myself when I look at my physique in the mirror or step on the scales. Now, You might be thinking, Ryan, that sounds kind of good. I could do that. I could enjoy the 24th and the 25th of December, eat a little bit more, and wake up on January the 1st feeling pretty good about myself. I'd love to do that. But what, Ryan, about all the social events I have on December 13th? That's been and gone now, but December the 20th, you know, works, Christmas drinks, and get-togethers at friends and family's places. And heck, even when Christmas is done, what about New Year's celebrations? What on earth do I do there? I still eat near calorie maintenance. Here's the difference. I indulge. I'll still indulge. I might have a glass of champagne, as I sometimes do on New Year's Eve. However, those calories are accounted for. They're built into my diet rather than those calories being stacked on top of my diet, taking me into that aforementioned calorie surplus. And then, of course, we risk some fat gain there, especially if I'm doing such deviations, stacking calories multiple days in a row. Does that make sense? Any other celebration, any other festivities, any other parties, so on and so forth, around the 24th and 25th, it doesn't matter. I can enjoy a little bit of XYZ. Obviously, I can't go too crazy, but I don't let them spill over my maintenance calories. And I'm going to talk about some compensatory ways that I do this in step 7, so stick with me for that. But that's the difference, is I still enjoy myself on other days in December, apart from those obvious 2 good free days on 24th and 25th, but the calories get estimated and accounted for. And this is the structured, controlled flexibility, bit of jargon, isn't it? But controlled flexibility that I'm always talking about. We're not blowing it, we're not spiraling, we're not derailing, we're not having massive cheat days all the time. I've got those 2 free days, but we're not having massive cheat days all the time through December, because again, this just stacks the calories up and up and up. I still deviate, but those things get accounted for, and there's a limit. There's a glass ceiling, therefore, to how many excess calories I can consume over the whole month. Step 2 that's helped me stay lean so far this winter, and I should clarify this because we've spoken about calories a lot already, and this always invites the follow-up question. So how do you know? Do you track your calories, Ryan? Etc., etc. Would you believe step number 2 is I do no exact calorie tracking, but here's the catch. I do keep rough score of my calorie totals in my head as the day goes on. How do I do this? You might be thinking, hold on, Ryan, if you're not writing this down in something like MyFitnessPal or Chronometer, how do you know with any level of certainty and precision that you're eating in the right calorie range for your goals? And that's a really good question. But for me, it's made so much easier because my diet is so incredibly repetitive. I know, for example, that my oatmeal dish here, as it is most mornings, is around 450 calories, and so I just bank that in my mind and add these things up as the day goes on. Sometimes I use the calculator app, would you believe, on my iPhone, so I don't have to use Chronometer on MyFitnessPal, and I haven't used these things on a day-to-day basis meticulously for the best part of 10 years now, and I'm still relatively pleased with my results. So for me, it's a preference that I don't count my calories, and obviously the negative consequence of that, or the rather obvious negative consequence of that, is it doesn't offer me the same guarantees and precision that I'm eating the right amount of calories. But what I would say is I've been doing this a very long time, and so I'm quite good at guesstimating any deviations in my diet, and I still am very, very big on using measuring cups, on measuring and weighing out my food. So that I will say, I just literally don't track it. So that's what I mean. I'm calorie conscious, I'm calorie aware. I still respect that calories are going to be a huge deal maker or breaker in my success, but I'm not sat there using Chronometer and MyFitnessPal and letting the apps being a guiding light for me if I want to eat a little bit more food on one day to the next, or seeing every nutrition choice through the caloric lens. I don't always want to do that. I argue there are lots of negative consequences that I don't like doing that. If you want to go deep with exactly how to lose weight without having to count and track your calories, this is not the video for it. It's just a couple of insights I'm sharing here, but I have made a lengthy video on this, so I'll link that down below if you want more. Of course, all of this is made so much easier for my clients because I simply tell them based on their food preferences when they fill out the intake form to work with me. I tell them precisely what and how much to eat to ensure they're in a moderate and therefore sustainable calorie deficit for them. So they can eat on autopilot without having to worry, is this too many calories? Is this too little calories? I'm gonna be really hungry. Like, all of that is calculated by me. That's all done for them. And step 3 to stay lean this winter, it's my warm one-pan meals, especially at dinner time when I can come home, because I'm out all day and it's starting to get really cold here in Central Europe, so I can come home to the nice warm place, throw a bunch of healthy ingredients into a large pot, just let a bunch of seasoning, let that simmer away whilst I answer my final couple of emails of the day. There's just such a godsend at this time of year to be able to do that. So we're thinking the loaded soups that I often do, we're thinking chilies. Here's oatmeal as an example. I just needed 1 pan for the oats and then just threw on the frozen cherries, chopped up some apples, some hemp seeds. That's a 10-minute meal at most, and it's 10 minutes, but I'm not even preparing food for the entirety of that 10 minutes. I'm getting set up with my video here, and so it's just really time effective to do these big 1-pan meals. And of course, I want the warm, I want the hot foods, I want the hearty element, lots of potato, which I haven't mentioned so far as well. Lots of potato I'm having this time of year. I want those big, hearty, comforting meals. Quite naturally, we crave these things at this time of year versus the lighter salads and so much of the yogurt bowls that I was doing much earlier this year. So yeah, loaded soups, chili, oatmeal, good example of this. And of course, my lean stir-fry soup, which is out of my rotation right now, but I was using that every night in November. Again, another godsend for me. The calories are low, but it's warm, it's high volume, it's filling, it's high fiber, so it fills me up for hours and hours and hours before I go to sleep. And these are just such a winner from a weight loss or weight maintenance perspective. Whatever it is, they can be adjusted for your goals very easily. I'm actually going to give you the lean stir-fry soup on the house, so I'll put a link to that down below if you're curious. But the warm 1-pan meals, it's very, very speculative what I'm about to say, but I don't think I would still have abs now if I wasn't doing my warm 1-pan meals and I was trying to recreate some of my favorite dishes from the summer. I think something would have fallen apart. These are just so brilliant this time of year for me, and I just naturally yearn for them anyway. Step number 4, we've spoken exclusively about nutrition so far, haven't we? But what about the exercise this time of year? It's starting to get really cold. Perhaps for you, you've had some snowfall. We had our first dumping of snow. It was fairly minuscule, actually, about 2 weeks ago. But we are starting to hit minus numbers sometimes, especially overnight. That's only going to get worse as we head into January. We're going to have a lot of snow here, I'm sure, in January, February too. So what do I do when you're less motivated to go outside in the chilly weather and move and sweat like you might be more inclined, naturally motivated to do, or certainly I am in the summer months? Well, full disclosure, first of all, here is my average step count has dropped. It's dropped to about 7,000 to 8,000 from about 11 to 12 in maybe autumn, summer months. And I'm actually okay with it on this occasion. Why? Because that drop off is not, we're talking about 3, 4, maybe max 5,000 steps. That drop off isn't significant enough for me, or it hasn't been thus far anyway, to cause any fat gain, or any fat gain that's so obviously noticeable that I'm even picking up on it. Now, here's where I'd be in trouble if my food started to slip as well. Because then on one hand, I'd be burning less calories through movement and then intaking more calories through food consumption. Well, that might start to become a real problem rather quickly. So I do still keep a watchful eye. So it doesn't bother me that my steps have dropped slightly, but I'm watching it. I'm cautious of it. I'm considering, I'm still thinking about it, if that makes sense. So yeah, and this kind of plays into just the general approach I have with exercise this time of year. I'm okay with my activity being marginally lower in winter when it's really, really cold. But the kind of handshake agreement I always make with myself is, I still get my daily steps in. There's still movement happening. I'm still getting in the gym a couple of times per week, even if it's slightly less, come what may. And that's the attitude I have. And this is really important going into the busy festive period as well, of course. I find a way to get my steps in. If I really need to, I'll just walk on the treadmill. I'll do high incline treadmill at my gym, which I often do anyway. I do that through the summer anyway. I'll get my steps in some way if I start noticing them drop. So that's kind of the handshake agreement that I've got with myself. But in the short term, if my steps drop ever so slightly when it's in the really, really cold phases, I'm actually okay with that. I actually don't care, would you believe, all that much. But when the activity lowers and the food intake increases, that's where I do have a really, really watchful eye. But it's nice to know for me that, yeah, the activity can drop in, for example, around Christmas, but it doesn't have to stop altogether just because it's December, just because of the month on the calendar. And so that's the agreement that I got with myself, is we always do something. Even if it's less, we always do something. Step number 5 to stay lean in the winter months. We've just spoken about daily walking, haven't we? But what do I do with my weight training? Well, similar theme really. That's dropped off ever so slightly too. Worked this out the other day. I've actually had far more, I think, rest days this month so far than in the previous 11. So I have scaled back from 3 to 4 strength training sessions per week to 2 to 3 per week. But again, it's a really marginal drop-off. We're not talking about a great deal. We're talking about the difference between maybe having 1 rest day, 1 strength training day, back to one rest day again to maybe sometimes having 2 rest days between strength training sessions. So it's just that minor adjustment. And again, looking at my physique, which is kind of hard always to assess as certainly muscle mass anyway in the short term. So far so good, I would say. Like, I don't feel any weaker. My personal bests in the gym haven't gone down. So I don't feel like I've lost muscle mass or strength. But admittedly, that is quite hard. It's very subjective. It's hard to tell in the short term. What is validating, though, like with the steps, is to know that I can just drop the strength training ever so slightly at this time of year without totally losing the results, without kind of being regressive in terms of progress. And what I'll actually do is, because I'm going to the gym marginally less often, I'll actually pair body parts, muscle groups together in one workout in a way that I usually wouldn't. I'd keep those muscle groups separate. So for example, when I was last in the gym a couple of days ago, I did chest and back together. Today, I'm gonna do a little bit of shoulders and legs together. I usually wouldn't necessarily pair those things in that particular sequence. But I'm doing this so everything still gets covered over the course of the week. So again, even though the frequency has dropped off, I'm still hitting everything I need to, so far, to maintain. And again, this is really validating in the busy periods where the motivation is less because cold weather, or again, there's just festive celebrations going on, so I don't have as much time for the gym. It's just nice to know, like with the steps, I can lower my standard slightly without dropping the habit altogether, and simultaneously, I'm still getting pretty decent results. Step number 6 to keep the abs this winter. I'm a bit of a hypocrite, actually, because I gave that whole spiel at the start about how you're not going to hear any conventional weight loss advice here. You know, these are all things, they're not cliche. These are things from my playbook, the exact steps that I'm using to stay lean this winter. And step number 6 here is actually something I haven't personally actioned yet, but at the time of me recording this video, this was on my mind anyway. I was kind of 90% sure that I was going to do this thing, and now thinking about it, I'm pretty sure that from the 20th to maybe the 30th of December, whilst my family are here, I'm going to start weighing myself again every single day, which I rarely do, as I've kind of boasted about. I really have to weigh myself nowadays. I've boasted many times on this channel about how I kind of can just maintain my weight without having to check all that much, which is a nice position to be, but kind of the position you would like to be after 10 years being into this stuff. Of course, it's quite natural. But certainly, what I would say is anyone at a more beginner or intermediate level with all of this stuff, with weight loss, with tracking their weight, with health and fitness improvement, etc., I mean, you should be weighing yourself very, very regularly anyway, I would argue, but certainly over Christmas, just to make sure things don't get too out of hand. The word of warning that I give on this is your weight one morning is not a reflection necessarily on what you've done the previous day. And you've got to think the amount of fat that you lose or gain in a 24-hour period, that can so easily be outweighed by a 300 milliliter glass mug, in this case, of water, which will be 300 grams adding onto your weight. So the scales are really reliable. They're the best measure of weight loss success, I argue. What you really want to be looking at is the trend rather than individual weigh-ins, and that's the warning I'm going to give you. So yeah, weigh yourself daily, but also see it as data collection, and mostly assess kind of multiple back-to-back weigh-ins rather than thinking, oh my goodness, yesterday I did, this is what people do, yesterday I ate so brilliantly, I'm sure I was in that calorie deficit that Ryan's always talking about, and I woke up today and I'm heavier than yesterday. That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't mean that what you did yesterday was wrong and therefore you should change your whole strategy today. It doesn't, because it's just one way, and the amount of fat you've lost in that, as I say, 24-hour period can so easily be outweighed by water consumption, sodium, therefore subsequently more water retention, food in your stomach, stool that hasn't passed yet, sorry to be crass, but it's true, etc., etc. And lastly, I said we'd come back to this, but most certainly not least, step number 7 to staying lean this winter. I am using compensation tactics for any more indulgent meals. Now, this is obviously what I work on personally with my clients for any social events or travel on their calendar, whether it's December or any other time of year for the record. And there are so many ways to go about exercising compensation strategy, and a lot of people get this wrong. So it isn't something to be done very frivolously and without thought. But one method that I'm gonna personally use a lot, quite a bit, I would say over the next 2 to 3 weeks, lighter breakfast. If I know I'm having a more rich, or what is likely to be a richer, more indulgent meal out later in the day. It's not to say a really unhealthy meal, but I know it's going to be restaurant food. Even if I pick a healthy poke bowl, a healthy salad bowl, I know there's going to be dressings and oils and sauces on that are just adding up the calories far more so than if I controlled it all at home. But let's say there's that meal out coming. I'm going to do a lighter breakfast, And I'm also going to do a higher step count than my usual 7,000 to 8,000 per day at the moment. Now, that's going to allow me, maybe not all of the excess calories, but to offset some, at least, of those excess calories from that more indulgent meal. That kind of step count, getting back to 11, 12, maybe even 13, 14K, even in the cold weather, that's going to be quite easy with family visiting. There's a bit of an advantage to me actually this year because they're visiting me rather than me visiting family. This way round, I'm hosting them. And so I'm going to be showing them around my city because they've only been a couple of times. We're going to be doing lots of cliched tourist stuff. But yeah, the step count is naturally going to be high because we're going to be exploring an awful lot and doing things. And so, yeah, that's a real advantage too. So yeah, the calorie intake has gone up, but I'm burning more through the steps. And I've also then compensated somewhat by having a slightly lighter breakfast. The risk here, of course, is quite obvious, so maybe it doesn't need saying, is if you have a lighter breakfast, are you then risking carrying that hunger over into later in the day? That's not always the best thing. But that's why I suggest that it's a lighter breakfast, not no breakfast altogether, or not just a banana. That might not be, 100 calories a banana might not be an appropriate breakfast whatsoever for managing appetite and cravings later on in the day. This is still worth saying though, with these compensation tactics like I'm talking about here, even when my family are here, I'm going to be eating my food, or at least very close to my food, 80 to 90% of the time. And I think that's a really important point to finish on because I've talked a lot about flexibility and making things fit, but I'm still going to be doing my oatmeal bowls. I'm still going to be doing the one-pan dinners. In many, many cases, I'll be cooking for them many nights, I'm sure. And even when I'm out and about, okay, it might not be my calorie control plan, but I'm still going to mostly pick healthier options. And then I've got those calorie compensations. I've got those 24th and 25th days where I can just have a little bit more fun with the peace of mind that it's not going to be sabotaging because I've done the work for the rest of the month. And if this whole approach makes sense to you, this nice balance between structure with a little bit of controlled fun, flexibility, so you get to January the 1st and you're not in terrible shape. If all of this resonates, this is literally the framework I use to coach my clients, of course, inside Vegan, Slim and Sustain. It's not about white knuckling Christmas, and hopefully you can see that today. We still have our fun, but at the same time, it's not about using the 25th of December or the 2 or 3 festive celebratory days around it as an excuse to just go crazy and have a blowout for the whole of December. And then, yeah, having to do some kind of crazy reset or restart come January. So if you want that controlled flexibility, like I'm always talking about, to enjoy yourself a little bit without totally spiraling, totally losing control, and you want this done with you instead of you having to do all of the guesswork and piece all of this together for yourself, I'll leave a link with the details to learn more about Vegan, Slim and Sustain somewhere in the description box down below so you can check that out. Okay, see you in the next video.